And though the path ahead was uncertain, she knew one thing clearly. She would remain steadfast, unwavering, and full of love. No shock, no revelation, no question could ever diminish the bond she shared with her child. She had faced fear before, and she would face it again, armed with courage, determination, and the deep, unshakable love that only a mother can feel. The morning light seeped through the hospital window, casting a soft glow on the pale walls. The mother sat beside her daughter, holding her small hand tightly, feeling the warmth that contrasted so sharply with the chill of uncertainty that had settled over her. Her daughter stirred, blinking slowly, and the mother smiled softly. "Good morning," she whispered. "We're going to get through today together." The events of the previous day weighed heavily on her mind. The unfamiliar name the doctor had used, the questions it raised, and the records that hinted at a hidden truth, all of it pressed down on her like a storm cloud. She had tried to maintain calm in front of her daughter, but in the quiet moments alone, the weight of the unknown threatened to overwhelm her. What did it mean? How could she reconcile the life she had known with this new possibility? The nurse arrived with breakfast, and the mother helped her daughter eat small bites, careful not to rush her. Each sip of water, each small spoonful of food, was a victory. She watched her daughter closely, noting every rise and fall of the chest, every blink, every small movement. It was exhausting work, but it was her duty, her instinct, her promise to protect. Soon, the doctor arrived, accompanied by a social worker and a hospital record specialist. The mother felt a shiver of apprehension. This was the moment when answers, or at least partial answers, would begin to surface. The doctor greeted her gently and explained that they needed to go through the records in detail, cross-checking birth certificates, hospital logs, and previous medical entries. The mother nodded, trying to steady herself. She was ready to face whatever truth might be revealed, no matter how frightening. The team spread out the documents on a table near the bed. The mother leaned forward, scanning the papers, recognizing her daughter's birth date and the hospital name, but then noticing discrepancies, small but undeniable differences in the details. There were notes she had never seen, signatures that were unfamiliar, and entries that suggested her daughter had once been listed under another name. Her heart pounded, a mixture of fear, confusion, and the desperate need to understand. The social worker spoke softly, explaining that sometimes records at hospitals could be incomplete, misplaced, or misfiled, but she also acknowledged that the discrepancies were unusual and required careful attention. The mother listened intently, feeling her mind spin. Every explanation, every reassurance, seemed to bring more questions than answers. She glanced at her daughter, who looked tired but trusting, and felt a surge of determination. She would not let fear control her. She would find the truth, and she would protect her child no matter what. As the hours passed, the team continued their investigation. The mother remained by her daughter's side, reading, asking questions, and helping the staff understand the context of her family's history. Every now and then, her daughter would reach for her hand, a small gesture that reminded her why she had to remain strong. She whispered soft encouragements, brushing hair from her daughter's forehead, holding her close whenever the anxiety threatened to overwhelm them both. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the specialist doctor leaned back in her chair and spoke with measured seriousness. She explained that the records suggested something extraordinary. There had been a mix-up at birth, a clerical error that had resulted in her daughter being listed under a different name in certain hospital documents. The mother's stomach twisted. She struggled to process the revelation. A mix-up at birth? How could this be possible? How could she have lived all these years without knowing? Tears welled in her eyes, and she looked down at her daughter, who was resting quietly, unaware of the depth of the discovery. She felt a mixture of relief and heartbreak, relief that it was not something dangerous for her daughter's health. Heartbreak at the thought of the years lost to uncertainty and confusion. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, knowing that she needed to remain calm for her daughter's sake. The doctor explained that while the situation was unusual, hospitals, especially in busy cities, sometimes experienced errors in documentation. The important thing now was to correct the records and ensure that her daughter's identity was properly verified. The mother nodded, asking questions about the process, the implications, and what steps needed to be taken next. She felt a sense of control returning, clarity that had been missing since the moment she had first heard the unfamiliar name. Despite the explanation, the emotional impact was profound. The mother thought about all the milestones, the birthdays, the school events, the quiet evenings at home. Every memory she had cherished now carried a new layer of complexity. She wondered how many people had known, how many had seen the records, and why this had remained hidden from her. She felt a pang of sadness, but also a renewed sense of purpose. She had to navigate this carefully, ensuring that her daughter's life remained as stable and secure as possible. The social worker helped the mother understand the next steps. They would contact the relevant hospital departments, verify documents, and make any necessary corrections. The mother listened, taking notes, asking questions, and mentally preparing for the conversations she would need to have. She felt a surge of determination. This was her responsibility, and she would see it through. She would advocate for her daughter, protect her, and ensure that her child's story was accurately represented as the day wore on. The mother noticed subtle changes in her own emotions. The initial shock was giving way to a quiet resolve. She realized that while the discovery was unsettling, it also opened the door to clarity. There were answers to be found, explanations to be understood, and actions she could take. She could navigate this step by step, ensuring that her daughter's well-being remained the priority. Her daughter, sensing the calm in her mother's presence, seemed to relax slightly. She rested her head against her mother's shoulder, drawing comfort from the familiar touch. The mother whispered gentle reassurances, telling her that they were safe, that they were together, and that everything would be okay. She marveled at the resilience in her daughter, the quiet strength that had carried her through the recent days of illness and uncertainty. Later, as the mother stepped out of the hospital room for a brief moment of fresh air, she allowed herself to reflect. The discovery of the mix-up had shaken her deeply, but it also reminded her of the importance of vigilance, love, and connection. She thought about all the times she had held her daughter, comforted her, and guided her through challenges. She realized that no matter what the records said, no matter what names were listed, her daughter's identity and her love for her were inseparable. Returning to the room, she found her daughter awake, eyes brightening as she saw her mother. She knelt beside her, brushing hair from her face, and smiled. "We'll figure this out," she whispered. "Together." Her daughter nodded, a small, trusting smile appearing despite the fatigue. The mother felt a surge of hope, knowing that their bond was stronger than any uncertainty, stronger than any hidden detail in a record. The rest of the day was spent carefully planning the next steps with the hospital staff. Forms were prepared, calls were made, and meetings were scheduled. The mother remained deeply involved, advocating for clarity and accuracy, determined to see the process through to completion. She took every opportunity to ask questions, ensured that her daughter's needs were prioritized, and learned everything she could about the procedures. Each small action brought a measure of reassurance, sense of control in the midst of chaos. By evening, the mother and daughter returned home, exhausted but relieved. She helped her daughter settle into bed, adjusting blankets and pillows, offering quiet words of comfort. She stayed by her side, holding her hand, feeling the warmth and trust that remained unbroken despite the day's revelations. She whispered stories, gentle tales that filled the room with a sense of security and love. As she watched her daughter drift into sleep, the mother reflected on the day. The discovery had been shocking, unsettling, and emotional, but it had also revealed the strength within her. She had faced fear and confusion, navigated uncertainty, and remained steadfast in her commitment to protect her child. She knew the path ahead would require patience, persistence, and courage, but she felt ready. She would face every challenge, advocate for her daughter, and ensure that love and truth guided every decision. The night was quiet, the house filled with soft shadows. The mother sat beside her daughter, holding her hand, feeling the gentle rhythm of breathing, the small warmth of life. She thought about the journey they had been on through illness, fear, and uncertainty, and realized that each moment, each challenge had strengthened their bond. She felt a profound sense of gratitude for the resilience they shared. for the trust her daughter placed in her, and for the love that would guide them through the days ahead. She had noticed it slowly at first, small changes that seemed almost harmless. Her daughter, usually full of energy and laughter, had begun to tire icily. At first she thought it was just the weather, the changing seasons, or maybe the little stresses of school catching up with her. But the mother, with her instinct sharpened by years of care and love, felt something was off. There was a quiet heaviness in her daughter's eyes, fatigue that no amount of sleep could shake. At breakfast one morning, the daughter barely touched her food, pushing her plate away with a weak smile. She mumbled something about feeling tired, but the words seemed hollow, lacking the usual spark. The mother tried to brush it off, telling herself that it was probably just a passing phase. Children often get lethargic, and sometimes they fall sick and bounce back quickly. But deep down, she felt a knot of worry tighten in her chest. By the end of that week, the symptoms worsened. The daughter began coughing, a dry, persistent cough that made her chest ache. Her cheeks, usually rosy, looked pale, and there were dark circles forming under her eyes. One evening, she complained of a sudden dizziness that left her clutching the edge of the sofa for support. The mother felt her heart skip a beat. She knelt beside her, holding her hand and stroking her hair, trying to hide her fear. She whispered words of reassurance, though inside she felt a panic that she couldn't shake. The next morning, the fever hit. She checked her daughter's forehead and found it burning. The numbers on the thermometer seemed impossible. She pressed the cold device against her daughter's skin again and again, hoping she had misread it. But the result was the same. The heat radiating from her child's small body sent a wave of dread through her. She knew it was serious now. This wasn't something that could wait it out at home. She needed help, and she needed it fast. She gathered her courage, packed a small bag with essentials, and held her daughter's hand as they stepped into the car. Every red light and every bump on the road felt like an eternity. She kept glancing at her daughter, whose eyelids drooped, her breathing shallow. Her little fingers squeezed her mother's hand weakly, and she tried to smile, but the effort was faint. Almost painful to watch when they reached the hospital. The mother felt a rush of cold air and the sterile smell of disinfectant. The waiting room was buzzing with activity, patients coughing, phones ringing, and the low murmur of hurried conversations. She tried to stay calm, but her mind was racing with 1,000 fears. What if it was something serious? What if it was something she could have prevented? She gripped her daughter's hand and led her toward the reception desk. The nurse at the front was quick to notice the girl's condition. Her brows furrowed as she asked questions, her tone professional but kind. The mother explained everything: the fatigue, the cough, the dizziness, the fever. The nurse nodded, taking notes, and guided them toward the pediatric department. The mother held her daughter close as they walked, feeling a mixture of relief and anxiety. She was relieved that help was coming, but anxious about what the doctors might find in the examination room. The daughter climbed onto the bed quietly, her head resting against the pillows. The mother took a seat beside her, holding her hand. She watched nervously as the doctor entered, a calm, middle-aged woman with gentle eyes that seemed to see right through her. She introduced herself and began asking questions, listening carefully as the mother described the symptoms. Every detail mattered, every small observation could be a clue. The mother's mind was a whirl of information, her words tumbling out in a mixture of worry and love. The doctor nodded thoughtfully, her pen moving quickly across the chart. She checked the daughter's vitals, listened to her heartbeat, and examined her throat and chest. The daughter was quiet, too tired to protest, and the mother felt a pang of guilt for not noticing sooner. She held her daughter's hand tightly, whispering soothing words and brushing her hair away from her face. The room was silent except for the daughter's soft breathing and the faint sound of the monitor beeping. After a few tests, the doctor left to review the results. The mother remained seated, her fingers entwined with her daughter's, her mind racing. She thought about all the stories she had heard, stories of children falling ill suddenly, of families shaken to their core by unexpected diagnoses. She tried to push the thoughts away, focusing on the present moment, on her daughter's soft breathing, on the small hand in hers. She wanted to believe it would be something simple, something treatable. something that would pass with a few days of rest. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes to the mother. She never left her daughter's side, feeding her water, wiping her forehead, and murmuring words of comfort. The daughter's eyes fluttered open from time to time, her voice barely above a whisper as she asked for her mother. The mother leaned closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead, and promised her that everything would be all right. She forced herself to smile, even though inside, a storm of fear raged. The nurse returned with some results. But before revealing the full picture, she gently suggested a few additional tests. The mother agreed without hesitation. She needed to know the truth, no matter how frightening it might be. She watched as her daughter was taken to another room for blood tests and scans. The daughter's small hand waved weakly, and the mother felt a tear slip down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away, not wanting her daughter to see her fear. Waiting in the corridor, the mother reflected on their life together. She thought about the first day she held her daughter, the sound of her laughter, the warmth of her hugs, the quiet nights spent comforting her through nightmares. She remembered every scraped knee, every small victory, every whispered "I love you." The thought of losing any part of that, of seeing her daughter suffer, was unbearable. Her heart ached with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. But she reminded herself to stay strong. After what felt like an eternity, the doctor returned. The mother's stomach knotted as she rose to meet her, trying to appear calm. The doctor's face was serious, but gentle, a combination that immediately made the mother's heart race. She knelt beside the mother, speaking in a quiet, steady voice, explaining that the results showed something unusual. Not life-threatening yet, but certainly something that needed attention. Something that required further investigation. The mother nodded, absorbing every word, every detail. She asked questions, wanting to understand every aspect of her daughter's condition. She wanted to prepare herself, to know what to expect, to ensure that her daughter would receive the best care possible. The doctor reassured her, promising that with the right treatment, her daughter could recover fully. Still, the air of seriousness made the mother's stomach twist with worry. Through the evening, the mother remained vigilant, watching her daughter sleep, monitoring her breathing, and making sure she was comfortable. She whispered stories into her ear, stories of magic, adventure, and bravery, hoping to bring comfort and familiarity in an unfamiliar place. Her voice, soft and warm, filled the room, a cocoon of love and protection around her daughter. Even as the hospital lights dimmed and the corridors grew quieter, the mother's mind refused to rest. She thought about what could happen, about doctors, treatments, and tests. She thought about the people she could call for advice, about the friends and family who would be worried. But above all, she thought about her daughter, her small, fragile presence lying beside her. Trusting her completely, through the night, she stayed awake, alternating between pacing the room and sitting by her daughter's side. Each sound, the monitors beeping, the quiet footsteps of nurses, the distant murmur of other patients, kept her on edge. Yet she held on to hope, holding her daughter's hand, feeling the soft warmth against her own. She whispered promises of health and happiness, of safety and love. By morning, the daughter seemed slightly better, her fever reduced, her eyes a little brighter. The mother allowed herself a small sigh of relief, though she knew the journey was far from over. The doctor returned with a more detailed plan for care, explaining medications, monitoring, and follow-up tests. The mother listened intently, taking notes and asking questions, determined to do everything in her power to help her daughter heal. As they left the hospital for a short walk in the fresh morning air, the mother felt a renewed sense of purpose. She held her daughter's hand tightly, feeling the pulse of life, the fragile but persistent strength within her child. She knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. And though uncertainty still loomed, her love, determination, and unwavering presence became the anchor in an otherwise stormy world. For the mother, that day marked the beginning of a journey filled with fear, hope, and the unbreakable bond between a parent and child. She would face every obstacle, endure every sleepless night, and hold on to every small moment of happiness, knowing that her love was the greatest gift she could give. And in her daughter's tired smile, in the warmth of her small hand, she found the strength to keep moving forward, one day at a time. The days that followed were filled with quiet tension. The mother tried to maintain a sense of normalcy at home, but every small cough or faint whimper from her daughter made her heart leap. She had started keeping a careful log of her daughter's symptoms, temperature readings, appetite, energy levels, and she checked them obsessively. Even when her daughter smiled or laughed, there was always a small shadow of worry lingering in her mind. She had arranged for her daughter to rest at home, but the fatigue seemed to be getting worse. There were moments when she would look at her daughter lying on the couch, her little body curled up under a blanket, and wonder how someone so small could carry such a heavy burden. She would sit beside her, stroking her hair, whispering words of encouragement. Her daughter's eyes, though tired, would meet hers, and she could see a quiet strength there that surprised her. Even in illness, her daughter seemed to hold a courage beyond her years. One afternoon, the mother noticed that her daughter's breathing was shallow and uneven. Her chest rose and fell in a pattern that was too fast, too irregular. A chill ran down the mother's spine. She felt the familiar tightening in her chest that had been her constant companion since the first day of the illness. She called the doctor's office immediately, her voice trembling slightly as she explained the situation. The receptionist assured her that the doctor would see them right away and asked them to come in as soon as possible. The drive to the hospital was tense and quiet. Her daughter rested against her side, clutching her hand weakly. The mother kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror, noting the pale skin, the drooping eyelids, the faint tremor in her small hands. She tried to focus on the road, but her mind kept returning to questions she could not answer. What was happening? Was this something serious? Could it be dangerous? She had never felt so helpless in her life. When they arrived, the pediatric wing was busy but organized. Nurses moved quickly, checking patients, delivering medications, and assisting doctors. The mother guided her daughter to a room and settled her onto the bed. She held her hand tightly, as if her grip could protect her from whatever was coming. The doctor entered a calm presence, carrying a clipboard and wearing a mask that hid part of her face, but not the careful attention in her eyes. She greeted them kindly and began asking questions about the past. Few days, the mother explained everything: the worsening fatigue, the coughing, the shallow breathing, the moments of dizziness. She spoke quickly, almost afraid that she might leave something out, that a single missing detail could be important. The doctor listened carefully, nodding occasionally, making notes. Then she began a thorough examination. She listened to the daughter's heartbeat, tapped on her chest to check her lungs, and measured her oxygen levels. The mother watched, feeling every beat of her daughter's heart in her own chest. After the initial checkup, the doctor recommended more tests: blood work, chest x-rays, and a few other scans that would give them a clearer picture. The mother felt a familiar wave of anxiety. Tests could mean many things, and she was afraid of every possibility. She watched as the nurses prepared the equipment and explained each step to her daughter, who nodded quietly, trusting her mother to be there. She tried to focus on the small reassurances she could give, brushing her daughter's hair back, holding her hand, and murmuring that everything would be okay. Hours passed slowly. The mother stayed in the room, moving from the chair beside the bed to pacing the floor when her nerves became too tense. She thought about all the things she had read, all the stories of children falling ill, all the worst-case scenarios. Every small sound, the beep of a monitor, the shuffle of nurses' shoes, made her jump. She was exhausted, but she could not leave her daughter's side. Every moment counted, every minute felt important. Finally, the nurse returned with preliminary results. The mother's stomach twisted as she looked at the clipboard, scanning for anything alarming. The nurse explained the numbers, the levels, the possible interpretations, but nothing was conclusive yet. The doctor would need to review everything before giving a full explanation. The mother nodded, trying to absorb the information without panic, though it was difficult. She reached for her daughter's hand and held it tightly, feeling the small warmth against her skin. As they waited for the doctor, the daughter drifted in and out of sleep. The mother watched her, noticing the subtle rise and fall of her chest, the way her lips parted slightly with each breath, the faint twitch of her fingers. She whispered little stories, quiet reassurances, trying to fill the room with comfort. She thought about all the times her daughter had laughed, the way her eyes sparkled when she was happy, the small gestures that made life brighter. She clung to those memories, letting them fortify her during the waiting. When the doctor finally returned, she brought with her a seriousness that made the mother's heart skip a beat. She took a seat and looked directly at the mother, explaining that the results showed something unusual. The mother's stomach tightened. Unusual could mean many things, some of them serious, some less so, but every possibility felt heavy. The doctor's calm voice contrasted sharply with the mother's rising anxiety. She spoke about possibilities, next steps, and the importance of observing certain symptoms closely. The mother listened intently, trying to remember every word. She asked questions, clarifying points, pressing for information that could help her understand what was happening. The doctor responded patiently, explaining medical terms in simple language, making sure the mother knew exactly what to look for, what to monitor, and when to call immediately. Despite the careful explanations, the mother felt a growing unease. Something in the doctor's eyes told her that the situation was more serious than she wanted to admit. She stayed by her daughter's side throughout the day, moving only when necessary. She fed her small sips of water, wiped her forehead with a cool cloth, and encouraged her to rest. Her daughter remained quiet, exhausted from the tests and the stress of being unwell. Yet there was a quiet resilience in her, a determination to endure that amazed her mother. Every small smile, every whisper of thanks, became a tiny victory in the mother's eyes, reminder of why she had to remain strong. As evening approached, the doctor suggested a specialist consultation. The mother agreed immediately. She knew that every second mattered, that getting answers quickly could make a difference. The thought of introducing a new doctor, someone unfamiliar, made her anxious, but she understood that this was necessary. She held her daughter's hand as they prepared to move to another room, offering quiet encouragement and murmuring promises of support. The specialist arrived and took time to review the existing results, asking additional questions about the daughter's medical history, family history, and any other symptoms. The mother answered carefully, recounting every detail she could remember, every small observation she had noted in her journal. She watched as the specialist examined her daughter with meticulous care, listening to her heartbeat, checking her reflexes, and observing her breathing. Every movement, every gesture made her heart race. After the examination, the specialist stepped aside to discuss findings with the doctor. The mother waited, her nerves stretched taut. She sat by the bedside, holding her daughter's hand, stroking her hair, and whispering stories of hope and bravery. Her daughter listened quietly, leaning against her, drawing strength from the mother's presence. She wondered how someone so small could endure so much, yet there she was, fighting through fatigue and illness with a quiet courage that left her mother awestruck. Finally, the doctor returned. She spoke gently, explaining that while the tests showed signs that required careful attention, they needed to conduct more detailed examinations to reach a definitive conclusion. The mother nodded, trying to absorb the information, trying to remain composed. She asked what could be done in the meantime, what she should watch for, and how to make her daughter comfortable. The doctor provided guidance, making clear the importance of staying vigilant and following instructions closely. That night, the mother returned home with her daughter. She carefully carried her to bed, covering her with a blanket and adjusting the pillow to make her comfortable. She sat beside her, holding her hand, watching her sleep. The day had been long and exhausting, but the mother knew that this was only the beginning of a challenging journey. She whispered promises of protection, love, and healing, vowing silently that she would do everything in her power to keep her daughter safe. She reflected on the events of the day, the waiting, the tests, the anxious moments, the small victories. She thought about how fragile life could be, how quickly everything could change, and how strong she needed to be. She thought about the future, uncertain but full of hope, about the bond between her and her daughter, unbreakable and filled with love. She knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. And as her daughter slept peacefully, exhausted from the day's trials, the mother allowed herself a brief moment of quiet reflection. She knew that tomorrow would bring more tests, more questions, and possibly more fear. But she also knew that she would be there every step of the way, offering comfort, strength, and unwavering love. In that quiet room, surrounded by the soft sounds of the night, she resolved to remain vigilant, hopeful, and strong, ready to face whatever the next day would bring. The following morning, the mother woke before the sun, her mind restless and heavy with worry. Even though her daughter slept soundly, the memories of the previous day lingered like a shadow. Every small sound, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant chirping of birds, kept her on edge. She quietly checked her daughter's temperature, relieved to see it had come down slightly, though her cheeks were still pale. She adjusted the blanket around her, smoothed her hair, and kissed her forehead gently. It was a fragile peace. The mother knew that they would need to go back to the hospital that day for further tests and consultations. She dreaded it, even though she understood it was necessary. Every visit brought new stress, new questions, new moments where her heart felt as if it might stop. She dressed quietly, packing the bag with the same careful attention as the day before water. Snacks, a small toy for comfort, a notebook filled with her observations. Her daughter stirred as they prepared to leave. The little eyes opened slowly, blinking against the morning light. The mother smiled softly, trying to convey calm and reassurance. "We'll be back soon," she whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "Just a quick checkup. Everything will be okay." The daughter nodded weakly, too tired to argue, and held her mother's hand tightly as they walked to the car. The drive to the hospital was quiet, filled only with the sound of the tires against the road. The mother kept stealing glances at her daughter, whose head rested against the window, her small hands clutching the blanket. She thought about how quickly life could change. Just a few weeks ago, her daughter had been running and laughing, full of energy and curiosity. Now, she seemed so fragile, a shadow of herself. The thought was unbearable, but she kept it locked away, focusing instead on the small comforts she could provide. Upon arrival, the hospital was busy as usual. The mother checked in quickly, explaining that they had come for follow-up tests. The nurse smiled kindly, acknowledging the previous visits, and guided them to the pediatric examination room. The mother helped her daughter settle onto the bed, smoothing the blanket around her and holding her hand tightly. She tried to offer quiet reassurance, whispering stories of magical adventures and brave heroes. Hoping to distract her daughter from the worry and discomfort, the doctor arrived promptly, a calm presence that had become familiar over the past few days. She greeted them warmly and asked a few routine questions before beginning a thorough examination. The mother watched closely as the doctor listened to her daughter's heartbeat, tapped gently on her chest, and checked her reflexes. Every movement of the doctor, every small reaction from her daughter, kept the mother tense. She could feel her own pulse in her throat, her anxiety tightening like a knot in her chest. After the initial examination, the doctor motioned for the mother to follow her outside the room. Her heart skipped a beat. Usually, this meant the doctor had something important to discuss, something that required privacy. She followed, feeling the weight of every step. The small tremor in her hands and the fear that had been quietly building since the first visit. The doctor spoke gently, explaining that the latest tests had shown unusual results. She used calm, professional language, but the mother's mind raced. Unusual could mean many things. Some were minor, easily treated. Others were more serious. She nodded, asking questions, trying to absorb every detail, every term, every explanation. She was determined to understand, to be prepared for whatever came next. Then, without warning, the doctor paused. She looked directly at her daughter's chart and said something that made the mother's stomach drop. She called her daughter by a name she had never used before, a name that did not belong to the child she had known and loved every day of her life. The mother froze, unable to speak, unable to process the words. Her mind spun in confusion. Had she misheard? Was it a mistake? How could the doctor know a different name? The daughter looked up at the doctor, puzzled. She had never been called that name, yet the doctor said it with certainty, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The mother's heart pounded in her chest. Questions flooded her mind, wild and frightening. Was there a mix-up at birth? Was there some secret she had never known? The fear she had carried for days shifted into a deep, sharp panic. The doctor noticed her reaction and paused, her eyes gentle but serious. She explained that there had been information on record indicating another name associated with the child, possibly from medical records at birth or from another facility. The mother's mind struggled to catch up. She tried to remember every detail of the birth, every moment in the hospital, every paper she had signed. Nothing seemed to fit. It was as if the ground beneath her had vanished. Her daughter, sensing the tension, looked to her mother for reassurance. The mother forced herself to smile, though it felt like a mask over the fear twisting inside her. She stroked her daughter's hair gently, murmuring that everything would be fine, that they were safe. But inside, the mother felt as if her world had been upended. She had always thought she knew her child, had always believed she understood the life they shared. And now, suddenly, there was a shadow of doubt. A question that threatened to unravel everything, the doctor continued, explaining that while the child's health remained the priority, it was important to investigate the records thoroughly. There could be a simple clerical error, a mix-up of paperwork, or something more significant. The mother nodded, her mind racing. She knew that no matter the reason, she needed to remain calm, to focus on her daughter's well-being, and to navigate whatever truth was coming their way. The rest of the day was a blur of tests, phone calls, and consultations. The mother stayed close, never leaving her daughter's side, holding her hand, offering quiet encouragement. She could see the small confusion in her daughter's eyes, the way she tilted her head as if trying to understand the tension in the room. The mother whispered stories, little reminders of safety and love, trying to anchor her daughter amidst the uncertainty. As the hours passed, the mother's thoughts raced in every direction. Could it really be that her daughter had been given a different name at birth? Was it possible that she had been switched at the hospital? Could there be a hidden family secret she had never known? Every scenario felt terrifying. Every possibility weighed heavily on her. Yet through it all, her love for her daughter remained steady, unwavering. She would face any truth, endure any shock, as long as she could protect her child. By evening, the doctor had arranged for a more detailed review of the records. The mother spent the time pacing the corridor, clutching the small notebook where she had recorded her observations. She thought about every moment with her daughter, the first steps, the first words, the nights spent comforting each other through fears and dreams. She wondered how it was possible that there could be a name she had never heard, a piece of her daughter's history hidden from her. The daughter, sensing her mother's anxiety, curled up against her side when they returned to their temporary hospital room. The mother held her closely, feeling the small, fragile body trembling slightly. She whispered reassurances, stories of bravery, of magical lands, of heroes who faced unexpected challenges. Her daughter listened, her eyes half closed, trusting her mother completely. The mother marveled at that trust, at the innocence and courage in her child, even as the world seemed to shift around them, late into the night. The mother tried to rest, though sleep was elusive. She lay on a chair beside the bed, her hand resting on her daughter's, her mind filled with questions. She replayed the moment the doctor had spoken that unfamiliar name, turning it over and over, trying to make sense of it. How could this be possible? How could she have lived every day, known every moment, and yet not known this part of her child's identity? When her daughter stirred in the night, the mother was immediately alert, soothing her, checking her temperature, ensuring she was comfortable. The little voice whispered softly, "Mom, will it be okay?" The mother kissed her forehead and whispered, "Yes, everything will be okay. We'll find the answers together." She held her daughter close, drawing strength from the bond between them, even as uncertainty loomed like a dark cloud. The next morning, the mother met with the doctor again, reviewing all records and notes carefully. They examined every document, every previous medical entry, every hospital form. Each piece of paper raised more questions, and the mother realized that this was a journey that would require patience, persistence, and courage. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders, but she also felt a fierce determination. She would uncover the truth, whatever it might be. and she would protect her daughter above all else. Through the day, she remained by her daughter's side, comforting her through tests, helping her rest, and offering quiet reassurance. She explained small things in simple words, distracting her from the worry, helping her feel safe. And in those small moments, when her daughter smiled, reached for her hand, whispered, "I love you," the mother found a strength she had not known she possessed. The uncertainty, the fear, the questions, they were still there. But they were tempered by love, by connection, by the determination to face whatever came next together. By evening, the mother realized that life had changed in ways she could not yet understand. There was a mystery about her daughter, a hidden truth that needed to be revealed. And as the moonlight filtered through the window, casting a gentle glow on the two of them, the mother made a silent promise. She would uncover every detail, correct every record, and ensure that her daughter's life was acknowledged and protected. No shock, no secret, no uncertainty would diminish the bond they shared. Together, they would face the truth, navigate the unknown, and emerge stronger, held together by love, courage, and an unbreakable connection that neither time nor circumstance could undo. The days that followed were filled with careful steps, slow progress, and moments of quiet reflection. The mother had learned that the process of correcting records and verifying her daughter's identity would take time. She spent long hours on the phone, filling out forms and coordinating with the hospital staff. Every call, every document, felt like another layer of protection for her child. She was determined that nothing would be left uncertain. Every detail would be clear and accurate. Despite the administrative work, her main focus remained her daughter. She watched her carefully, noting even the smallest improvements in energy and appetite. The fever had lessened, the coughing was softer, and she seemed to smile more easily, though there was still a quiet tiredness in her movements. The mother felt a mix of relief and cautious optimism. Each small victory was a step toward normalcy, a reminder that her daughter's health was stabilizing. During one afternoon at home, mother sat beside her daughter on the couch. They held hands and talked quietly, the soft sound of their voices filling the room. The daughter asked questions, innocent and curious, about why the doctor had called her by a different name. The mother paused, choosing her words carefully. She explained gently that sometimes mistakes can happen, even in important places like hospitals, that what mattered most was that they were together, safe and healthy. Her daughter nodded thoughtfully, seeming to understand in her own way. Trusting the mother's words, the mother realized that trust would be the key through this entire journey. Her daughter had always relied on her for comfort, guidance, and protection. Even now, with the shadow of the recent discovery looming, that bond remained strong. She knew that she could not shield her daughter from every difficult truth forever, but she could ensure that the process was gentle, careful, and filled with love. Every action, every word, every touch was part of keeping her daughter secure in a world that had briefly felt uncertain. The process at the hospital moved slowly but steadily. Staff members checked and rechecked records, confirmed identities, and updated documentation. The mother attended meetings, answered questions, and provided the information needed to clarify every discrepancy. She watched closely as her daughter participated in follow-up checkups, always holding her hand, always offering reassurance. It was exhausting work, but the mother felt a sense of purpose. Each step forward was a victory. Each small detail clarified was a triumph. One morning, after several weeks of careful work, the mother received a call from the hospital. The records had been corrected, and her daughter's identity was now fully verified and consistent across all documents. Relief washed over her in a wave she had not expected. She felt tears prick her eyes as she hugged her daughter tightly. The weight of uncertainty had lifted, replaced with clarity and a sense of safety. She whispered words of comfort and celebration, feeling the strength of their bond more keenly than ever before. The mother reflected on the journey that had brought them here. It had begun with illness, worry, and fear. Then came the shocking revelation of an unfamiliar name and the questions that followed. Now, after weeks of effort, they had reached a place of understanding and resolution. She realized that the challenges had tested her, pushed her to her limits and demanded patience, courage, and resilience. And through it all, she had discovered the depth of her own strength, as well as the quiet power of love. Her daughter seemed to sense the change. She smiled more freely now, spoke with renewed energy, and even laughed at small, playful moments that had been rare during the difficult weeks. The mother cherished these moments, recognizing them as signs that the child was not only recovering physically but also emotionally. The little gestures, the reaching for a hand, the quiet giggle, the thoughtful question reminded her of the resilience children possess. Even when faced with uncertainty, life gradually began to return to a new normal. The mother resumed some of her daily routines while remaining attentive to her daughter's needs. They spent mornings in the park, afternoons reading stories together, and evenings in quiet reflection. Each day was filled with small victories: a longer walk, a hearty meal, a smile without worry. The mother embraced these moments, understanding that stability and love were now the anchors of their lives. The mother also reflected on the importance of honesty and trust. She knew that as her daughter grew, there would be more questions, more moments where truth and understanding were required. She decided that when the time came, she would tell her daughter the story of the mix-up at birth in a gentle and loving way. For now, it was enough to live in the certainty that her child's identity was secure and that their bond was unbreakable. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow through the windows, the mother and daughter sat together on the couch. They held hands, sharing quiet conversation and gentle laughter. The mother marveled at how much had changed in such a short time: the fear, the uncertainty, the shocking revelations, and now the clarity and calm. She realized that life could be unpredictable, that unexpected challenges could appear at any moment, but that love, patience, and courage could guide them through even the darkest moments. The daughter leaned against her mother's shoulder, tired but content. She whispered softly, "Mom, I feel safe with you." The mother's heart swelled with emotion. She kissed the top of her daughter's head and whispered back, "And you always will. No matter what, I will always be here." In that quiet, shared moment, the mother understood that the journey had strengthened not only their bond, but also their resilience. They had faced fear together, navigated uncertainty together, and emerged stronger together. Over the next few weeks, the mother continued to monitor her daughter's health, but the constant anxiety that had once filled her days began to ease. Each doctor's visit confirmed that her daughter was growing stronger, healthier, and more energetic. The mother felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the resolution of the mix-up, but for the unwavering presence of her child, for the love they shared, and for the strength she had discovered within herself. She also began to reflect on the lessons learned from the ordeal. She realized that life could deliver sudden shocks, that plans could be disrupted, and that uncertainty could creep in without warning. But she had also learned that love was a force that could withstand even the most unsettling revelations. She had learned the importance of vigilance, of asking questions, of seeking clarity, and of never underestimating the strength that existed in both herself and her daughter. The mother began to share quiet moments with her daughter in ways that reinforced their connection. They read stories together, cooked simple meals, and took long walks, noticing the beauty in everyday life. She celebrated small milestones, the return of energy, the warmth of a smile, the sparkle in her daughter's eyes. Each moment was precious, a reminder that life's challenges could be met with love, care, and resilience. Eventually, the mother felt a sense of closure. The mix-up had been addressed, the records corrected, and her daughter's life fully acknowledged. She knew that while the past could not be changed, the future was theirs to shape. She felt a quiet pride in her ability to navigate the challenges, to remain steadfast in the face of fear, and to protect her child with unwavering dedication. One sunny afternoon, the mother and daughter walked through a quiet park. The air was fresh, birds sang in the trees, and the world seemed calm. Her daughter ran ahead for a moment, laughing freely, and the mother felt a surge of joy. She knew that the trials they had endured had made these moments even more meaningful. She watched her daughter closely, smiling as the child spun in a circle, carefree and full of life. As they walked home, the mother reflected on the journey from fear to resolution. She thought about the moments of panic, the long hours in the hospital, the shock of hearing an unfamiliar name, and the painstaking process of correcting records. Each step had been challenging, but it had also been filled with lessons about patience, love, perseverance, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and child. That evening, as she tucked her daughter into bed, the mother held her close. Feeling the gentle rise and fall of her breathing, she whispered softly, "You are safe, you are loved, and you are mine. Always." Her daughter smiled sleepily, her trust unwavering, and the mother felt a profound sense of peace. The uncertainty that had once clouded their lives had been replaced with clarity, stability, and hope. In the quiet of the night, the mother reflected one last time. She realized that life's challenges could appear suddenly and without warning, but the love she shared with her daughter was constant and unshakable. She had faced fear, navigated uncertainty, and protected her child through every twist and turn. And in doing so, she had discovered a strength she had never fully recognized.